podcast, and you're listening to episode number 2, and I'm your host, Marilee Duffy. My mission with the Casual Temple podcast is to introduce the world to a variety of ways you can develop a relationship with spirit. We will hear from everyday people about their magical practices, psychic phenomenon, energy healing, as well as hear about their amazing, mystical, and paranormal experiences. This week, my guest is Michael, who joins the podcast to talk about his Kundalini awakening experiences, what happened before, during, and after that experience, and his ongoing Kundalini awakening and spiritual journey. Well, thank you all for joining us here at Casual Temple. Our guest today is Michael, who is here today to talk about his ongoing Kundalini awakening experience. Let's give Michael a warm welcome to the show. So, Michael, where we'll start today is sort of where your spiritual journey began and kind of kick it off from there.
Thanks, Marilee. It's great to be here with you and Casual Temple listeners. I guess I got my spiritual start in life in childhood. I grew up in the Midwest, and I come from a very conservatively religious family, and was kind of in that atmosphere and in that environment the majority of my childhood and teenage years. Kind of, I guess, a little during that time, definitely in my childhood too, I was very intuitive, and as I know now, very psychic too. And I had some experiences that frightened me a bit at the time. So I kind of buried that part of myself. Because I was in such a kind of conservative environment, kind of suppressed a lot of parts of myself, actually. As I was kind of growing up and coming out of that environment, I left it all behind when I moved out of my parents' house and moved away from the Midwest into the West Coast. As I kind of was more coming into my own, I just pushed aside all spiritual things for a number of years. After I'd left the church, and kind of all through my 20s and most of my 30s, I was not spiritual at all. I went through kind of a not quite atheist, more agnostic phase, and concentrated pretty solely on my career. I worked in tech, and it was kind of just a really concentration on survival at that time in my life. And survival at the time was working the job and climbing my career, and that's pretty solely what I was focused on for a number of years. I would say, in my later 30s, I started doing yoga. And it was pretty fitness-based yoga. There wasn't much of a spiritual aspect to it at all. And was doing it kind of on my own and sometimes with a group. I think kind of as I was getting more into it, I did realize, and I think I read somewhere that there was a form of yoga called Kundalini yoga. Although I didn't kind of look into it too much. I probably thought at the time it sounded kind of too esoteric. I just knew kind of generally that it may have been kind of more spiritual or energy based, but I didn't do too much research into it at the time. Kind of flash forward, I guess, to I think it was during the pandemic, um, kind of in that um, liminal time, like 2020, or it actually was specifically in February of 2021, when I woke up in the middle of the night and had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening.
So how I know I've read other accounts and heard other accounts of sort of the actual experience of it. So what exactly was it, and did you know at the time what you were experiencing, or um, like how did you handle it, I guess?
Yeah, I did not know what I was experiencing at the time. I uh, have always kind of had trouble sleeping and would wake up at weird times, so that wasn't quite unusual. Um, During this specific week, though, I was waking up pretty consistently at the same time during the night. It was always around 3 a.m. Um, and the night that it happened, um, I had woke up at 3 a.m. again and felt very um, energy starting in my root chakra, or what I know now is my root chakra. Then I just felt it, kind of knew that it was like in my pelvis area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I uh, didn't know what was happening, so I just laid in bed, and just was thinking like, what is happening right now? I'm not sure what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, remember laying in bed, wondering what was happening, and at the time I didn't have a consistent meditation practice either.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had been doing yoga, and that was kind of just my first like kind of foray into this area.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and um, uh, Actually, I think there's one other thing that I will
Mm-hmm.
mention
Mm-hmm.
that happened kind of before this too, that I think was a factor into it starting. So during the pandemic, a few months before I woke up and this happened, I had taken a class based on Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a self-help book kind of based around creativity, not necessarily spiritual practices, although creativity is very spiritual, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I had wanted to do it because I wanted to find an outlet that was more creative for me, and I
Yeah.
wasn't sure how to go about that. I had uh, done some creative things like musically when I was like a young adult. But because I had been so focused on my career, I kind of pushed everything else aside, and was kind of wondering, like what can I do in that area? So
Mm-hmm.
I joined the group that was going through the Artist Way, and part of the um, basic kind of practices that you start doing right away in that book is what's called the morning pages.
Mm-hmm.
And morning pages are um, uh, waking up every morning, and the first thing you do is get out a notebook and write three pages stream of consciousness. So very much like intuitive writing. Um, but in this case, how it was approached is like you're getting everything out of your head,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a blank slate kind of for the rest of your day. Um, so I was doing this pretty consistently for a few months before this happened. And so I do think that just kind of the meditative aspect of the intuitive writing, maybe coupled with the yoga that I was doing, kind of brought me into uh, definitely a more spiritual state than I had been in, for the 15 years prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I really felt that I kind of had um, more of an open mind, maybe, or was ready to be more receptive to um, things, to spiritual things and things that um, were going to happen to me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very articulate. I don't think I've heard people kind of explaining the lead up to that or what they suspect was the lead up to something like that. So it's very interesting. So how did you know after the fact? So I'm assuming you Googled some things because I do that too.
Yeah.
You're like, I'm seeing this or experiencing that. So what did you find that you were like, oh, I think it was this? Do you remember that specifically?
Yeah. So yeah, I think to answer that, I'll go back into my experience and what
Hmm.
was happening. Um, so I had woken up at 3 a.m., felt an energy start in my pelvis and my root chakra, and did not know what was happening. It was I'll say it was like pleasurable too. So I thought maybe this is just like something that normally happens. But it also felt like deeper than that. Um, so it felt just different. Um, is probably the best way that I can explain it. And kind of as I sat there and focused on the energy, I noticed that it started to travel up what I thought was just like my spine at the time.
Hmm.
And uh, it seemed to pause as it was kind of traveling up throughout my spine, and um, it would kind of intensify. And as it intensified, I just felt like I needed to get out of bed.
Hmm.
And then um, I got out of bed and went into my living area, kind of where the yoga mat was, and just felt kind of called, I guess, to get the yoga mat out and kind of lay on the floor and go into what I know now is called kriyas, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, so like not yoga poses, but just movement that is directed by the energy. And I just kind of spontaneously started doing that.
Hmm.
And as I was doing it, I could feel kind of the energy pausing and then it kind of intensifying and then de-intensifying, continuing to travel up my spine and go up um, what I know now are the chakras, but what I thought then was just kind of my spine, and then kind of felt it go all the way up. And then when it reached into my head, I felt a really definite change in consciousness.
Hmm.
Um, felt much uh, more expansive. Like it was not just me and myself and my ego anymore. I was
Hmm.
very connected to what felt like everything, the universe, and yeah, it was just kind of a feeling of uh, expansiveness and oneness that was pretty wonderful.
And this was all in the same night, like one entire thing.
Yeah, probably maybe 30 to 45 minutes.
Wow. That's a
Yeah.
long, that was a long time. Oh my gosh. So I think you mentioned so prior to this, you had never heard of a Kundalini awakening at all, or
Right,
um,
I didn't. The
okay.
closest I'd heard, yeah, was I knew there was a form of yoga called Kundalini yoga. I didn't
Hmm.
know what it was though.
Okay. Because I was gonna be like, so how did it compare? Because it sounds like they're different. I've uh read quite a bit about other people's things. Some of the automatic yoga poses is like a thing that actually happens. I've read also that some people like start doing mudras with their hands and stuff like that to get the energy moving around. So that's pretty cool that you experienced that. And then I'll also just mention that I was doing Kundalini meditation maybe like 15 years ago. And then I started doing Kundalini yoga here in Seattle with a group. And I did notice, like, because we would do the Kriya
Hmm.
exercises, and the way our teacher, his name is Sada Simran, he's no longer with us. He passed from COVID.
Mm.
Um, but he would say like the reason to do all these kriyas is to gradually move the energy. So
Mm.
maybe like because some people when they do have sort of the spontaneous, it like really kind of sometimes it like really messes with them psychologically and physically. So
Yeah.
I don't think that happened to you, but you can tell me otherwise.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've heard
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it could kind of get stuck too.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't happen to me, but I can see how that might be kind of unsettling. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I'll say that also one of my experiences with sort of that energy movement I was doing, and it was during the pandemic because we were doing online classes with the same teacher. And there was a movement where we were doing like moving, you're kind of like on all your fours, on all fours, and then doing this breath technique. And I felt it like it was going to push through my heart chakra. And I was like, no, I knew if it did that, I saw what was going to happen. Like I had some sort of like weird precognition of like I was going to be like bawling and sobbing on the ground for like hours. I saw that was it. I was like, nope, nope. And then I told it, I was like, it's not going to happen today. I was like, this needs to be I was like I was like bossing it around. I was like, this needs to be
Too much,
gradual.
too
This is
much.
too
Yeah.
much. I got bills to pay. Like, come on. Um, so yeah, so I think that is, I guess, why some people do the Kundalini yoga is to kind of get used to sort of that energy movement. But mine was like very strange. But um, cool. So, what would you say, if anything, after this experience changed in your life, or did anything change, or how did you manage it after figuring out it was Kundalini awakening?
Yeah. So afterwards, I wanted to find out what happened to me. So I did, as you mentioned, and as I'm sure a lot of people do, Google a lot. And I think pretty quickly, kind of after I was looking into it, I realized that it was a Kundalini awakening. Um, I didn't, I never felt that it really could be anything else. I think that was the thing I found the soonest, and that was the thing that made sense to me. Um, and as I read kind of other people's experiences, it sounded exactly what I had experienced. Um, and regarding changes in my life, I will say that it did bring up a lot of um, uh, things that I had buried. I realized that, like at the time, um, I had really compartmentalized a lot of things in my life. So I had been focusing a lot on my career, like I talked about, and I kind of separated that out from like the rest of my life and from like my personal life and from friendships, and they were all very separate things. And then after this happened, I felt like all of these things can't really be separate anymore. That I need to do some kind of, integration um, uh, into me and kind of what I am. And like I'm not living, four separate lives. I'm like one life, and it all needs to come together. So that is kind of what I remember feeling directly afterwards. I do remember feeling very more cosmic, I guess, um, more connected to the universe. more, it seems like part of a universal kind of consciousness, I guess. Um, and that did kind of bring up questions to me as to, okay, what do I believe now? What, um, because previously, like my spiritual experience kind of had been limited to, conservative Christianity. And I knew that I didn't believe that anymore. But I really had to kind of figure out, okay, what do I believe and what makes sense to me? So there was, yeah, I guess a period of soul searching, I'll say after it. Um, and um, yeah, a really kind of mm, time of like heads down um, contemplation.
Hmm. Um, I've also heard, so during that, did you notice? 'Cause I've also heard it's very similar in a lot of ways, like these sort of spiritual experiences kind of mirror each other, like similarly to sort of NDEs, like near death experiences, they sort of have similar kind of stages that people are going through. Um, and I've also heard with Kundalini awakening that people come out of it with like special powers and abilities. Did you notice anything like that for yourself?
Yeah, kind of in addition to like the cosmic feelings or
Hmm.
universal consciousness, I did notice um, that my intuition seemed to be turned up. Um, and um, I knew that I had kind of always been more intuitive. I didn't always trust it before, but this experience and the feelings I had kind of afterwards led me into kind of more of a trust into that part of myself and into a deepening of a connection with my intuitive self and intuitive abilities.
Hmm.
And that's what led me eventually to Psychic Awakenings in Seattle, where we met.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah,
Uh, cool. So it sounds like for you, it was just sort of enhancing your already, you were already very intuitive. So it sounded like it just kind of pumped that up a bit for you. In addition to having that cosmic awareness,
yeah,
sounds like.
yeah, um, yeah. Trying to think of like specific examples of intuition. Nothing is coming to mind. Like it's just I remember feeling kind of a more turned on that way.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think also, especially with like intuition and sort of learning that thing of you're getting like when you, for me, it happens like I'm like in a conversation with somebody and I'm hearing what they're saying,
mm,
but I'm getting information of like what they're saying is not matching sort of the information I'm getting. And I'd say the skills that we learned at Psychic Awakenings really kind of helped me understand like the information I'm getting is actually probably more true than what the person is actually saying out of their mouth.
yeah,
Um, and I've
yeah. I
noticed
really,
that too. Yeah.
sorry, I was gonna say like I
Yeah.
really uh respond to that too.
Hmm.
Kind of growing up, um, I had always kind of almost been very blunt to uh a degree that was like cost me friends sometimes,
Oh
and I
gosh.
had to learn
Yeah.
how to more control that part of myself.
Hmm.
But kind of looking back, I realized that it's because I didn't know how to mm, monitor kind of the intuition I was getting, and so I would
Hmm.
just say things as they were,
Yeah.
and that would not be welcome all of the time. Um, so part of like what you said as we learned at Psychic Awakenings was how to control that part.
Hmm. Oh gosh, when you just said that, I had like some PTSD a little bit when you were like, oh, yeah, definitely. I was very much the person that, or the kid that would just blurt out information or things
Yeah.
that were very obvious. I was like, and then I would get confused because I'm like, this is obvious. Like,
Yep.
why am I getting in trouble for this? Um,
That's
yeah.
funny. I just saw something online the other day where someone was saying like that's how I figured out that I was psychic was that um, I basically like thought these people were so stupid. Like, why aren't they like getting this like simple information? And like, oh, I'm getting information from other sources. That's
Mm,
how I'm like understanding it, and that's why like they're getting information too, but they're not getting like information the same way or the same information that I'm getting. So
oh, wow.
understanding that too is really helpful. But I thought, yeah, she put that very well.
Yeah, that's like amazing because I never thought about it until you said it. And then I thought about it, and then you had that example because yeah, that's perfect. Because I was just like, of course, come on. Like, this isn't magical, but I guess in some way it sort of is.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So I guess, because you went to Psychic Awakenings, was there like any person that either helped you through the process, or was there like a book that really helped you, or anything like that to kind of manage it in a way?
Yeah. So while I was kind of going through it at the beginning, I talked to a couple people that I found online who
Mhm.
kind of offered their services as being someone to talk to while people are going through a Kundalini awakening.
Cool.
And I found that helpful a bit. I didn't really connect too much with the people that I talked to, but they were helpful at just having someone there to talk to about it.
Okay.
Um, um, uh, I will say, so kind of right after my first experience, a couple months later, it was like 2 or 3 months later, or 3 months later, actually, I went to Hawaii on vacation. And while I was there, towards the end of my trip, it happened again.
Mm,
So I woke up around the same time during the night. It was like 3 a.m. And again, kind of felt the energy starting in my root chakra. And um, what was different this time, though, was kind of when it hit my head instead of ending kind of shortly after that, it stuck around for much longer. So
mm.
it was like 12 hours that time.
Whoa.
So yeah, as opposed to, the first time where everything was kind of over, like within 45 minutes at the most, this one stuck around a lot longer. And I remember like waking up, or I think I just stayed awake throughout the day and kind of just kind of meditated with the energy and felt it mm, throughout the day.
So you had a Kundalini awakening in Hawaii.
Yeah.
Not bad. So were you just like awake the entire time and just trying to meditate or manage the energy? Is that kind of what was going on?
Yeah. So definitely the first time I went back to bed, like an hour after it happened, because the energy had definitely left my body after that.
Mm,
The second time, um, now that I knew what it was, I had done the Googling and I talked to one person. And okay, I thought like, okay, let's, you know, see what this is, see if I can like meditate with this
hmm
and, try to determine like what it will show me. Um, because one of the or I had like a lot of questions after I had my first one,
hmm
or definitely two major questions came up. It was like the first one was like, what is happening? The second one is like, why is it happening to me?
hmm
Um, and So after I figured out what was happening, I kind of wanted to figure out why is it happening to me. So the second time it happened, I meditated with it and uh, did kind of the cries again. And that's kind of when I uh, got the information or got kind of a feeling that I kind of needed to integrate more aspects of myself.
Mm.
Um, and because I had like compartmentalized so many things, I needed to kind of go within and understand kind of myself more.
Hmm. So what, if you're willing to share, because these are obviously kind of personal, what aspects do you think you were kind of reticent to integrate that you kind of kept shoving aside, I guess? That's what's coming to mind.
Yeah, um, definitely. I kind of kept mm, spiritual things separate from
Mm.
my like personal relationships, from like my friend relationships, and I just kind of felt like I was living these separate lives based on kind of what was happening
Hmm.
um, at the time, and I yeah just kind of felt like um, I don't think the whole answer was integration, but it was definitely part of the answer was integration.
Hmm.
Um, integrating like just or maybe just kind of understanding how to be more honest and vulnerable. I think that was a big one too.
Yeah. Yeah, that vulnerability is the one that kind of gets me too.
Yeah,
It's kind of hard.
it's
Like,
tough.
it's
Yeah.
tough. You're like, oh man, this means I got to ask for help.
hmm
Yeah, it's tough.
But
Um, Go ahead.
sorry, yeah, going
Yeah.
into actually uh, people that I sought out afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in addition to kind of talking to a few people online, I went to see an Ayurvedic practitioner
Hmm.
here in Seattle. Um, I had kind of an initial interview with him and kind of told him that I think I was going through a Kundalini awakening. And he invited me to come into his office and talk to him about it more. And it was the first time I had seen a non-Western medical doctor,
Hmm.
um, other than uh, like acupuncture or something like that. Um, and it was really great. He did kind of what I know now are kind of like intuitive, kind of almost like hypnosis like exercises
Wow.
to kind of better inform like his uh, opinion of what was happening. And that was really helpful.
Hmm.
I saw him a few times, and he was always very helpful and receptive, and always wanted to like address like all of me too, and not
Mm.
just the part that was the Kundalini awakening, but actually was like, this is just like a side effect of, something else that's happening right now.
Hmm. Is he maybe saying maybe something also physical that's happening or some like what was the something else, I guess is the question.
Yeah, not physical, I guess,
Hmm.
but just more of kind of maybe like an integration thing too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Now I have a practical question because the
sure.
Ayurvedic piece. Because I saw more of an Ayurvedic as like counselor. I don't know. He wasn't a doctor, but he was just like he basically told me what my dosha was, that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Did you kind of have to go through that too? Like he kind of talked about
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. He talked about it a bit.
Hmm.
And yeah, and I found out what my dosha was. Um, and yeah.
Okay. Also, one more practical question. Because I also got sort of like the diet plan with like your dosha. Like, do you follow that diet plan?
I didn't get the diet plan, no.
Okay.
I did get some like liquid things to take for a while.
Mm.
Um, I'm not quite sure what they were actually because they were in Indian
Oh, right.
or in Hindi, sorry. And
Hmm.
I don't read Hindi. He explained
Right.
what they were, but I just don't recall what they were right now.
Okay.
And I tried them for a while, but kind of fell off the wagon there.
Yeah. Kind of similarly with myself and the diet plan, 'cause it's pretty strict. I don't know if you've looked at your dosha plan, but it's like, whoo, it's kind of strict.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for asking or for providing sort of the practical side of that. Um, so it sounds like this might have already sort of answered the question I had about like your ongoing Kundalini experience. You've shared sort of Kundalini events. Do you consider that your ongoing, or is there other sort of smaller pieces that are folded into sort of these bigger events of you having the energy rushing and that kind of thing?
Yeah. So I would say those are like the two big events. Um, but since then, I would say kind of with almost a regularity, like every 3 months, I will wake up at the same time, 3 a.m., and have like a mini Kundalini awakening. So the energy is like not as intense as it's been those two times, but I can still feel it there. And it probably lasts maybe like to 20, 30 minutes.
Hmm. So it's not as intense, maybe as
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, I don't know. You probably already know this, but like 3 a.m. is sort of like that magic hour of
Yeah.
like sort of the doorway every night. I don't know if you've
Right.
heard about
Right.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, have you, so I'll just kind of veer off a little bit. Have you
Yeah.
had any other experiences in that time frame, like that 3 a.m., meaning like you contacted any sort of spirits or received any messages? Because that tends to happen as well.
Yeah. So interestingly, I would always wake up around that time when I was a child too. And I remember seeing what I guess now are like energies, um, kind of like in the form of spheres when I was pretty young a few times.
Hmm.
Um, and I remember it happening maybe when I was like 8, 9 years old. Um, and then kind of flash forward to like my late 30s. I'll wake up around that time at different nights, not usually not when the Kundalini awakening is happening, but different
Hmm.
nights, and I will feel like there are um, kind of unknown entities around as well,
Hmm.
um, which um, I'm not sure who they are. So I definitely would like to kind of understand more who they are and do
Hmm.
more work into that. But yeah, it's always around that 3 a.m. time is when that happens.
Hmm. Um, Not to totally go back into your childhood, but just curiously, when you were seeing those spheres, did you tell anybody, or you're just like, this is weird? I don't know.
Nope, I
Nope.
kept it to myself. Yep.
Okay. Smart kid, I guess. You were like, there's nobody safe I can tell. So
Yeah.
yeah. I guess sort of side question to that. Was anybody in your family, if it weren't your parents, was there like an aunt, uncle, cousin that was kind of a weird cousin or weird aunt?
So
Maybe.
yeah, my grandparents on my
Hmm.
mom's side,
Oh.
actually when I was little, they I'm not sure how. how it came about, but they bought
Hmm.
me dowsing rods.
Whoa, cool.
Yeah. And I didn't really know what to do with them because I was like 5 years old or
Right.
something. So I just thought they were cool. And I think I like actually like went looking for water, but I didn't know like actually how to use them. But I think just like wandered around outside of them. But I mean, looking back now, they've since passed.
Hmm.
But I think my grandmother was very psychic and very
Hmm.
intuitive,
Hmm.
and probably knew that I was as well, because we kind of had a strong connection especially when I was younger. Yeah,
Hmm. Oh, that's cool. That's so funny to me that they just kind of handed you some dowsing rods, like,
yeah,
go have at it. And you're just
yeah.
like, how does this work?
Right, right.
Yeah. Oh, that's too funny. Um, okay, cool. So do you have any sort of advice for somebody that's either going through a Kundalini awakening or, oh gosh, I should have asked this question first. Actually, I'm gonna back up. Do you feel like, you kind of touched on this already, that there you kind of might have a sense that something's going to happen? I don't know if that, like, maybe before it happened, you were like, there was sort of a feeling of an expectation of something was going to happen, or was it just, it was literally out of the blue kind of thing? Like,
Yeah, I'm not sure. Thinking back, I'm not sure if
mm,
I had a feeling. It was because it was during like the pandemic when just everything felt kind of weird in general. Um, I am not, I can't say for sure that I had a feeling of anything was going to happen ahead of time. Um, yeah, yeah. I mean, looking back, I'm like, maybe I did, but I can't say for sure.
okay. Yeah, I think it's usually a surprise for people. But do you have sort of advice, so if somebody else is Googling and then they can see, like, here, maybe your experience, that what, you would offer them?
Um, I think what I would say is if you do have someone in your life that you can talk about it with, or even if not talk about it, but if um, like issues come up or like if it brings up things that you've suppressed before, definitely talk to someone, talk to like a trusted friend or trusted adult there. um, um, because yeah, um, eventually like that is, I think, what helped me the most was understanding, no, I'm not too crazy. um, but yeah, talking to kind of other people that had had similar experiences and understanding that I'm not alone was very helpful.
Hmm. Yeah, that always seems to kind of ease it a little bit so
Yeah,
instead of feeling so isolated with it. Especially during the pandemic, my goodness, like, it was already sort of an isolating time.
right,
Um,
right.
but maybe not if you're an introvert. It's kind of okay. It was a little okay. Um,
Yeah. Well, I thought it was like I was so happy for the first like year.
yeah,
And I was like, okay, I'm kind of ready to get back to
yeah,
people at least occasionally
right,
again.
exactly. I'll fold that back in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, that was definitely, I'll just mention just about that sort of 2020 time period. So I had like blood work done in like
Mm-hmm.
2019, right? And I had like
Mm-hmm.
high cortisol levels, and my doctor was like, we got to work on these cortisol levels. Da, 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 da. Anyway, in like 2020, I think it was 2021, I think like June 2021, had my blood work done again, and my cortisol levels dropped dramatically. And
Awesome.
I was not exercising, 'cause it's a pandemic, whatever, probably wasn't eating the best. But yeah, my cortisol levels like were like on the very low end of the range. And I was like, I know exactly what this is. It's because I don't
Yeah.
have to go out all the time and social. I know exactly that this is it.
No stress
Yeah. And
or
no stress.
socializing stress. Yeah.
Socializing stress. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's pretty funny. I guess to veer a little bit, we did talk about sort of the orbs and things that you saw as a
Yeah.
child. Was there any sort of other experiences when you're a kid? Because like a lot of times those, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, that it kind of gets wrapped up in sort of dreams or daydreams, but some of them are like, no, that was that one was different. Like that was real. Do you have any sort of experiences that were strange that you kind of remember?
Yeah. So like when I was very, or not very young, but I guess mm, like 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, that age, I always had like a lot of imaginary friends. And looking back and wonder like, well, they were they all actually like imaginary, or were there, different energies there? I think probably more the latter, that there was, always some kind of energy around me, like maybe interacting with me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but the other thing I'll say is too, so I kind of touched on the beginning that I grew up in a kind of conservative religious household. The particular brand of Christianity that I experienced was Pentecostal,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I mean it does have a lot of energy
Mm-hmm.
component
Yeah,
to it.
yeah, yeah.
So I did kind of grow up seeing people get slain in the spirit, and kind of affected by the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Uh, I, as a kid, I just thought that all was really weird. Um,
Yep.
um, but and then as after I left the church, I kind of didn't want anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Even though looking back, I can maybe appreciate it now
Yeah.
a bit more, kind of um, for different things than I thought it was back
Mm-hmm.
then.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never thought about it that way because yeah, my dad was anyway, so I was baptized Catholic because my dad is Irish Catholic, my mom is Filipino, so definitely Catholic. But they were like kind of that lax Catholic, didn't really
Hmm.
go to church. And then my dad, after my mom and he got divorced, then he was kind of playing around with like going to different churches, and then one of them was
Hmm.
like I think it was just a fundamentalist Christian church.
Hmm.
Um, but they were speaking in tongues and that sort of stuff. I'm pretty sure that was fake though. But but um but the thing I was trying to get at is sort of like maybe the experience you had as a kid was definitely real, right? They're getting,
Yeah.
but it's unfortunate that it's sort of bound up in sort of this ideology, that
Right.
that gets like a handle on it and
Right.
kind of
Yeah. A
says they own
very,
it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hmm.
Ideology that's very patriarchal and,
Hmm.
um, uh, kind of suppressive of everything that's not, that
Yeah.
very strict kind of interpretation of
Hmm.
Christianity. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something I'm going to be chewing on a little bit about like yeah, I guess it is real for those kind of folks too and you know, I guess kind of what do they call it? Like reconcile that with sort of
Right.
maybe my own experience, because mine is also
Yeah.
real, yours is real, but like so is theirs and
Right.
kind of annoying,
Yeah.
at least for me. Um
No, I hear you. Yeah.
yeah.
Agreed.
Um Sort of I was going to sort of relate a little bit about sort of a childhood stuff because it is
Yeah.
like I had anyway, so I had this pecan tree and I lived like my family lived in Louisiana until I was 5 years old. And there was like this pecan tree in the backyard. And I loved that freaking tree. It was beautiful. Like it was
Uh,
probably ancient too, because this is like Louisiana. So it was
yeah.
anyway, it was huge and ancient, but it was on the Air Force Base. Anyway, I love that tree. Um, but I kind of remember talking around the tree. I wasn't, right
Mm.
now I don't consciously remember that there were entities or anything, but I've gotten now two different psychics, two different sources that have told me like you have like fairies and gnomes around you. And I'm like, in that same order. They're like fairies and gnomes. And I'm
Fairies and
like,
gnomes.
yeah,
It's
fairies
great.
and gnomes that are around you trying to connect with you. And I'm like, how do I do that?
They're from the pecan tree.
Yeah, they're from the pecan tree, or yeah, at least some for
They
sure.
followed you. Yeah.
Yeah, they might very well might have followed
Yeah.
me around, but yeah, I do think that's also funny. But yeah, because I was like, why was I so obsessed with that freaking tree? And like, but yeah, I think there is like stuff in childhood where it's sort of some of it kind of dissipates and you just
Hmm.
remember certain things. But anyway, apparently it's coming back because I've got two different people telling me that they're kind of around. Well, thank you for that. I guess so what is so we're kind of wrapping it up a little bit, but what is either I say a mantra or a motto or something that kind of helps you get by or you know that you think about often?
Um, I think like um, kind of more recently, I guess, um, because we together have been through a clairvoyant awareness program,
Hmm.
and there's been like so many cool things that have happened during it. I think kind of the thing that I've been thinking about most recently is just that like cool things are going to keep happening.
Hmm.
um, like it just like how unexpected the experiences that happened were. There are just going to be more of them in the future, and that's really exciting.
Hmm.
So I think yeah, that's something I've really been thinking about was just that excitement kind of for the unexpected.
Hmm. Well, I like that. Instead of maybe, sometimes being afraid of the unexpected, kind of like,
Right.
oh, looking forward to the unexpected.
Yeah.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Mhm. So what is your current area of focus, either in sort of your either your spiritual life right now, or kind of where you want to go move forward with any of the skills that you've learned?
So I am still figuring that out. Um, I I have put up a website. So if people would like to visit that, there's just a landing page right now, but there is
Hmm.
a contact form there. It's www.intuitiveworkings.com. Intuitive workings is plural.
Hmm.
Um, and so when I figure out more what I would like to offer, it will be listed there.
Awesome. That's a great name, by the way. I'm
Thanks.
surprised it wasn't taken. That's a great name.
I know it came to me when I was meditating, and then I got so excited. I was like, I have to see if it's available. And surprisingly, it was. And I'm like, it's a sign.
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh my
Meant to
gosh.
be.
Yeah. Um, okay, cool. Oh, so what is or who is somebody that inspires you uh today and right now?
Um, so you sent me these questions ahead of time, and I was telling you earlier that I didn't think about all of them except this one.
Okay.
I'll say I did try to think about this one some. And honestly, the people that came to mind were like you and the seven other people that would just came through the clairvoyant awareness program with,
Aw.
um, because it was just such an intense experience,
Mm-hmm.
and we saw each other grow so much during the past year in so many ways. And we just celebrated last night was our
Mm-hmm.
graduation.
Yeah.
And it was, yeah, the only thing that I could think of was just how inspired I was by seeing everyone just kind of grow into their own
Mm-hmm.
as psychic readers and healers.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah. It is very inspiring, even though, man, during some of it, you're just like, I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's tough.
It is tough. I know, to the people listening, if you ever go through a program like this and you're like, wow, woo woo, it sounds all airy fairy. Well, no, you get to deal with a lot of problems that you didn't think you were ever going to deal with in a very short
Right.
amount of time. It's very
Yep.
harrowing. But
All
it's
your karma
wonderful.
comes up to deal with.
Yeah, exactly. Here's this, here's this, here's this, here's this. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. But the blessing is having like a lot of people around that are also going through it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Eases it a bit for sure.
And I will say, like, I think one of the things that I have been thinking of starting to do is
Mm.
Josephine McCarthy's course called Quoria.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, it really appeals to me in that it's kind of an intensive self-study course. I really like that it's completely free and like
Mm-hmm.
there's no gatekeeping around any of the information.
Yeah.
Um, and um, I really like that it's a self-study and go at your own pace, and that they're the part of the program is that kind of if you keep detailed notes, you could uh, be mentored in the future by someone more advanced in the program, and I think that's really attractive. And
Mm-hmm.
I think something that I would like to do eventually is like be a mentor to someone starting out uh, in that kind of field in the future. So
Yeah.
yeah, that really appeals to me.
Would you mind the website, like spelling out the website?
Yeah, I'll have to do that. I always have to type it out.
I know it's a weird word. Sorry, Josephine.
It's Quoria. It's Quareia.
Mm-hmm.
www.quoria.com.
Cool. Um, where did you hear about this program?
It was just a Google search.
Mm.
I think it just came up as I was thinking about what to do next after our program.
Oh, wow, cool. Yeah, I know that Josephine's been interviewed on the Glitch Bottle a few
Okay.
times. So if you haven't heard those, or if you've never heard her interview, she's always entertaining.
Mm.
Like she is hilarious. But also like she knows her stuff and she's amazing. I do have a couple of friends. I'll probably be connecting with them on this podcast, but they were doing Aquaria as well. And they were really enjoying it.
Cool.
I admire people who do Aquaria because I looked into it and I was like, it's a little much for me personally. But I
That's a
admire
lot.
people, yeah, that are doing it because it's a wonderful course because she has really thought a lot about it. Well, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I know we already sort of talked about your contact information, but if you wanted to share that one more time as we are officially wrapping up here.
Yeah, so my website is www.intuitiveworkings.com.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Thanks, Michael, for joining the show. And I look forward to hearing more about your adventures in the future. And yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Marilee. It's been great talking to you.
That was an interview with Michael where we discussed his ongoing Kundalini awakening experience. And to learn more about Michael and his practices, please visit his website, intuitiveworkings.com. To learn more about the Casual Temple podcast, please visit our website, casualtemple.com. There's a Casual Temple YouTube channel, and you can follow me on Instagram with username @MarileeDuffy or @CasualTemple. Please be sure to leave a review and share this episode with the people in your life who would enjoy this content. Do check out the other episodes of the Casual Temple podcast on your preferred podcast app, and thank you so much for listening.